Hi everyone, thank you all so much for joining us today. My name is Lucy and I am Research Manager at Charity Job, and I'm also joined by Jinsha, who's Research Executive. And Jinsha will be facilitating the Q&A at the end of this webinar. So I just wanted to start with a very quick introduction to us for those of you who don't know who we are. So Charity Job, we are the largest specialist recruitment site for the UK charity sector. We help charities find people who share their purpose faster, easier, and more fairly. And we offer a range of 3 practical tools to support charities in their recruitment journeys, including Charity Job Recruiter, our end-to-end hiring platform, a salary checker tool, and we also have features like anonymous recruitment to help reduce bias in the recruitment process. And one thing we firmly believe is that offering fair compensation is essential for attracting and retaining top talent, but also for promoting diversity, equality, and inclusion in the charity sector. Some of you may be aware that we recently produced a Charity Job 2023 salary report, which looked at the salaries of all jobs posted on our site last year. And at the same time, we wanted to understand more about the benefits our candidates receive and those they value to help support charities by painting a comprehensive picture of compensation in the sector. So that's why we ran the benefits survey and we produced a report on the findings, which I'll be chatting through with you all today. So I'm just going to go through a few little bits of housekeeping before we kick off. So firstly, you should be able to see my webinar slides at the moment. The slides should move through the webinar with me. If they go out of sync at any point, a sync to presenter button will appear in the bottom left-hand corner of the screen where you use the arrows to flick through the slides. So you can press that button to sync the slides back to where I'm at. As I mentioned, we will have some time for Q&A at the end of this webinar, so please use the Q&A function on Teams to leave your questions. If you're joining on the Teams app, this should be on the banner at the top of your screen, and if you're joining on your phone, it should be on the bottom right-hand corner. So Jinsha is going to be keeping an eye out for questions, and we'll try to answer as many of these as possible in the Q&A session at the end. So don't worry if you don't get an immediate response to your question. And if we don't get round to answering your question today, I will follow up with you directly after the webinar. I just want to note that this webinar is being recorded, so please only share your questions if you're happy for them to be on the recording. And finally, we will share a recording to the webinar as well as the webinar slides and a copy of the benefits report to everyone who registered later today. So I'm just going to turn my camera off now so you can focus on the slides. So here's a quick overview of what we'll cover today. I'll be talking for around 20 minutes and there should be around 10 to 15 minutes at the end for Q&A. So I'm going to kick off by talking a little bit about the background and methodology of the survey and talk about who also answered the survey. Then I'll be discussing the benefits which charity job candidates currently receive in their roles and the ones which they're looking for in future roles. After this, I'll talk more about what other factors are important to candidates when considering job opportunities, so the working arrangements which candidates want and other considerations they have. And I'll finish up with some key takeaways and recommendations for charities or organisations who are recruiting. So first, I'm going to talk a little bit about how and why we conducted the survey. So the aim of our research was to enhance our understanding of how the charity sector compensates its employees. And the findings will complement those from our salary report, which looks at average salaries and salary trends within the charity sector. We hope that the findings from this survey, as well as those from our salary report, will help you to consider what you need to offer in order to stay competitive as a recruiter and attract top talent to your charity or organisation. So we shared the survey with candidates who'd used the Charity Job website within the last year, and we got over 1,400 responses from our candidates. We included questions on candidates' demographics, the benefits they received, and as well as the ones that they wanted, and questions on the importance of factors such as organisation culture in their consideration of job opportunities. So now I'm going to talk briefly about who answered the survey. So of those who responded, 71% were currently employed within the UK, and 60% of those were currently working within the charity sector. Looking at other demographics, around 70% of our respondents were female. Their ages varied quite a lot, however, the majority were between the ages of 25 and 54, and a third of our respondents had caring responsibilities. So now I'm going to talk about the benefits which our candidates currently receive in their roles. So we asked candidates who are currently employed within the UK to select all the employee benefits and perks they receive from a list. And on average, all respondents received around 6 of the benefits and perks listed. So the most commonly received benefits and perks by those working within the charity sector were 25 days or more annual leave, which was received by 80% of charity sector respondents. Remote working options, which was received by 79% of charity sector respondents, and that was followed by flexible working hours at 71%. And then around half of our charity sector respondents received 3 tea and coffee, training and development opportunities, and mental health and wellbeing support. So this table shows the full breakdown of benefits with the percentage of charity sector employees who received the benefit, as well as the percentage of non-charity sector employees who did. So the 6 benefits that I just mentioned on the previous slide, they were received by more respondents who are working within the sector than those outside of the charity sector. However, a few of the other benefits were more commonly received by slightly more candidates who aren't currently working in the charity sector. So, for example, an enhanced pension was received by 23% outside of the sector, compared to 17% within. Cycle to work scheme were received by 32% outside the sector, compared to 26% within. And a clear progression pathway was selected by 11% outside of the sector, compared to 5% within. So this tells us that the benefits picture within the charity sector is quite different to the benefits picture outside of the sector. So while there are consistent benefits received by most in the sector, this suggests that the benefits tend to vary a little bit more for those outside of the sector. So now I'm going to talk about the benefits which are important to candidates in their consideration of jobs. So we showed respondents the same list that I just showed you, and we asked them to select the ones most critical to them when considering job opportunities, so they could select up to a maximum of 5. And before I talk through the ones which came up most frequently in a moment, I just want to emphasise that the ones I mentioned are the top priority choices. However, that's not to say that the others which were less frequently selected as the top 5 aren't important. It's just that rather they were less of a priority for the majority of respondents. So the 3 most commonly selected benefits which were selected as the top 5 were 25 days or more annual leave, which was selected by 71% as the top 5. And then that was closely followed by flexible working hours and remote working options. So these 3 benefits really stood out as the most popular ones, as they were selected by the majority of our respondents as the top 5. After those, these were followed by training and development opportunities, which was selected by 44%. The 4-day work week on full-time pay, health insurance or private medical insurance, mental health or wellbeing support, clear progression pathway, above statutory paid sick leave, and an enhanced pension. To help us understand which of the 5 benefits that candidates selected are actually most important to candidates and perhaps most likely to kind of sway their decisions between jobs, we went on to ask candidates to arrange the benefits they selected in order of priority, so they could rank them from 1 to 5. We looked at the benefits which were most commonly ranked as a number 1 and a number 2 priority. And the most commonly selected benefit as a number 1 priority was kind of around an even split between 25 days or more annual leave or remote working options. And the most commonly selected benefit as a number 2 priority was flexible working hours. So this kind of once again suggests how fundamental these 3 things are to candidates in their job searches. It's not surprising that remote working comes out as one of the top priorities, as we also know from data reported in our salary report that remote roles were around 6 times more in demand from candidates last year compared to on-site jobs, and that was evidenced through the clicks that they got on the apply button. But this also tells us that flexibility in the form of flexible working hours and a generous annual leave entitlement are of great importance in candidates' decisions around jobs. We went on to explore subgroup differences in the top 5 benefits selected, and we found that, perhaps unsurprisingly, flexible working was more likely to be the most important benefit to those who had caring responsibilities. And interestingly, men were more likely to see a generous annual leave entitlement as the most important benefit, and they were also more likely to rank health or medical insurance as a highly desired benefit than women were. So now I'm going to briefly talk about how the benefits that candidates receive compared to the ones which they want. So the 3 sort of most critical benefits and perks being 25 days or more annual leave, flexible working hours, and remote working options, they were received by the majority of charity sector respondents at 80%, 71%, and 79% respectively. However, they were received by a much smaller proportion of respondents not working in the sector. And this was especially true of flexible working hours and remote working options, where only half of non-sector respondents reported having these in their current jobs. Some benefits were highly desired by candidates, but received by only a small proportion of those who responded. And these were 1, a 4-day work week on full-time pay, health insurance or private medical insurance, a clear progression pathway, and an enhanced pension. So recruiters should take note of these findings and consider offering these benefits or looking at how they can offer clear progression opportunities for roles if they aim to attract candidates effectively and stand out among the crowd. So we also wanted to learn more about what other factors are important to candidates when considering job opportunities. So we asked candidates to rate how important the salary, flexible working hours, remote working opportunities, organisation culture, diversity of the organisation, and organisation mission/purpose were in their consideration of jobs. So as you should be able to see from the large pink and yellow bars, the responses showed that all of these factors hold significance for candidates. 2 which stood out as being very important were organisation culture and organisation mission/purpose, with more than half of respondents ranking them as very important. If we look at very important and important rankings together, we see that the salary, organisation culture, and organisation mission/purpose emerged as the top factors, as these were selected by 91%, 91%, and 88% respectively. With the current cost of living crisis, it's not too surprising that salary is a key factor in candidates' decisions around jobs. So some research done by ONS at the end of last year found that around 1 in 5 UK working adults reported looking for a new job that pays more money because of increases in costs. And some really recent research by the CIPD in their Good Work Index 2023 found that for people who said they may leave their job, the most important reason was to get better pay and benefits. However, in addition to salary, the responses suggest that charity job candidates want to work for a cause they're passionate about in a positive and supportive working environment. And for many, these are key factors in job decisions. So when advertising jobs, charities should highlight aspects such as a positive organisation culture and the impact of the role on achieving the charity's mission. And charities who are advertising on charity job can use the organisation profile feature to help them showcase these things. There were some subgroup differences in responses to this question. So younger candidates, and particularly those aged 24 and below, were more likely than those in any other age group to prioritise working for charities that align with their personal values and that have a clear vision or purpose that resonates with them. So 65% in this age group identified the mission and purpose of a charity as being very important, while the average across all age groups was 51%. Salary was the most important factor to those aged between 25 and 35, The emphasis on salary in this age group could be due to increasing financial responsibilities, such as housing costs or childcare costs, which are common in this age range. And finally, flexible working hours were more important to those aged 36 to 44, those with caring responsibilities, and women. We went on to ask respondents about the type of work and working arrangements that they're looking for. So we found that around half were looking for full-time work, around 1 in 5 were looking for part-time work, and a quarter would consider full-time or part-time work. Respondents without caring responsibilities were slightly more likely to be looking for full-time work than those with caring responsibilities, who are more likely to be open to part-time work. We also asked about the types of contract they're looking for, and 57% of those we surveyed were looking for a permanent role. Only 4% were looking for a fixed term or temporary role. However, 39% would consider a permanent or fixed term/temporary role. At the end of the survey, we gave candidates the option to share any further thoughts related to benefits, and 158 respondents took the opportunity to leave a comment. And from those comments, a couple of key themes emerged, which I'm just going to talk through with you. So the first key theme which came up was the importance of psychological safety and a supportive organisation culture where employees feel listened to and valued. So respondents spoke about things like working somewhere where there's no bullying, where there are no cliques, where employees feel valued and where they are respected and nurtured, and where they feel comfortable to speak up and acknowledge any mistakes. The second key theme which emerged was the importance of achieving a good work-life balance, supported by flexible working arrangements. Some respondents told us about the importance of having effective and understanding managers or leadership at work. And others told us that they felt that the employee benefits a charity offer should align with a charity's cause. So, for example, cancer charities should also offer enhanced cancer or health support for its employees. Some respondents told us how important it is to them that charities offer supportive policies and practices for disabled employees. So this may include things like a supportive sickness policy, medical life insurance, or a 4-day work week on full-time pay. And finally, a few respondents told us about their concerns about staying in the charity sector due to its lower salaries and the increases in costs of living. So, for example, one respondent told us that some of the salaries they're looking at within the charity sector aren't enough to cover their rent and living essentials. So that brings us to the end of the survey findings. So now I'm going to share some key takeaway messages and some recommendations for those of you on this webinar who are recruiting. And these research-backed recommendations should help you to improve your benefits offer and subsequently attract top talent. So the first thing I wanted to talk about is how pay is not the sole motivator. So the findings from this survey show that pay is indeed important to candidates, and candidates are very unlikely to apply for jobs that don't pay them competitively, especially in the current economic conditions. However, the findings also highlighted that there are other factors that candidates prioritise when considering job opportunities, including benefits, perks, culture, and mission. Secondly, the benefits and perks most commonly received by charity sector employees are 25 days or more annual leave, remote working options, and flexible working hours, which were received by the majority of respondents within the sector. And that was followed by 3 tea and coffee, training and development opportunities, and mental health and wellbeing support, which were also received by a massive amount, so around half of charity sector respondents. So these benefits and working arrangements were received by most candidates within the sector, and they should be considered as standard offerings to attract and retain talent within the sector. So if you don't offer these things, you will likely struggle to recruit against other charities which do. Interestingly, the most important benefits that candidates want do align closely with those already received by charity sector employees. So generous annual leave, remote working, and flexible working hours are key to candidates. However, this doesn't mean that other benefits aren't important or attractive to candidates. Rather, is that these things may be essential to candidates when considering jobs. and charities should absolutely sell the benefits that they do have, and they can do so on Charity Job's organisation profile feature. While some benefits are critical for most candidates, the relative importance of specific benefits may vary across different demographic groups. So factors such as caring responsibilities, age, and gender can influence candidates' prioritisation of each benefit. So it's important to consider these differences when designing benefits packages and tailor them to the specific needs of diverse candidates. Or charities could consider offering flexible benefit plans to candidates where they can pick and choose from several options. And finally, a positive and meaningful working environment is really important to candidates. So factors such as the mission of a charity, psychological safety, supportive leadership, and a healthy work-life balance are vital. It's so important for employers to cultivate a positive and supportive working culture that fosters inclusivity and aligns with the charity's values. And finally, here are 5 recommendations I'd really encourage you to take on board. So number 1 is to prioritise the most benefits which are in highest demand. So as I mentioned before, candidates highly value 25 days or more annual leave, flexible working hours, and remote working options. And these are a near standard offering in the sector. So these benefits should be prioritised and emphasised in job descriptions and recruitment efforts to attract and retain talented people. Secondly, you should consider offering additional benefits to stand out from the crowd. So there's significant demand for many benefits, including training and development opportunities, a 4-day work week on full-time pay, health insurance or private medical insurance, mental health or wellbeing support, a clear progression pathway, above statutory paid sick leave, and an enhanced pension. Next, you should consider flexible ways of working. So flexible working hours and remote working options are hugely important to candidates. And these types of working, in addition to other types of flexible working, such as compressed hours, time off in lieu, and annualised hours, can enhance work-life balance and increase appeal to a broader range of candidates. And they're especially important to those with caring responsibilities. You should also focus on organisation culture and mission. So candidates see an organisation's culture and the charity's mission as very important when considering job opportunities. So highlighting the positive aspects of the culture and emphasising the meaning and impact of the work can help attract people who are passionate about making a difference. And finally, you should sell the full benefit package on your job descriptions and job adverts. So in addition to the job salary, make sure you're clear and upfront about the benefits, perks, and any related factors that may attract a candidate to your workplace. And if you're posting a job on Charity Job, you can use the organisation profile feature, as I mentioned, to showcase who you are, what you offer as a charity, and why it's so great to work for you. So thank you so much, everyone, for listening. We'll now take some questions from the Q&A. So I'm just going to hand over to Ginger.
Great. Thank you so much, Lucy. That was really insightful, and I love the key takeaways and recommendations at the end. So we'll jump onto the Q&A. So one of the questions was, is 25 days plus annual leave statutory?
Thanks, Ginger. That's a really good question. And no, it's not. So I believe the statutory amount is 20 days, or it's 28 days, including bank holidays. So within the UK, I think there's typically 8 bank holidays. So 25 days leave is an enhanced amount of leave. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you. So another question, are the same benefits offered to volunteers?
That's a really good question. So we don't actually have data on what benefits are offered to volunteers. And I guess while volunteers aren't necessarily entitled to things like holiday pay or sick pay because they're not contractual kind of members of your organisation, there are definitely other things you can do for them, and rewarding volunteers is definitely important. I guess it likely depends on the commitment of volunteers. So are they full-time, or do they come in perhaps a couple of hours a week? Often we do know that charities are able to reward volunteers through things like training and development, or perhaps if your volunteers looking to get a job within a charity in future, you could help them with their CV. And obviously things like free tea and coffee, if you're able to afford it, are great. And reimbursing expenses does tend to be kind of a standard thing that I believe is done from charities to their volunteers. And obviously kind of showing gratitude and making volunteers feel part of the charity is important. What I would recommend is reaching out to some other charity professionals in our volunteer management community on Charity Connect. So you can see how they're doing this in their charity or seek some kind of professional advice elsewhere. And I also know that the NCVO have done some really great research on their time well spent research, which looks at volunteer participation and kind of motivations and barriers to volunteering, which might help you when thinking about what benefits you'd want to offer volunteers.
Great, thank you so much. And is there a difference between benefits offered by charity size?
So this is something that we don't know from our data, so I can't talk about it with certainty. However, typically larger charities do tend to have kind of more resources for more comprehensive benefits packages. So things like health insurance, gym memberships, cycle to work schemes, things like that do tend to be more likely to be offered at a larger charity. However, smaller charities are more likely to have kind of benefits offered on a smaller scale, but they will be more responsive to employees' needs. So they kind of tend to be a bit closer to their employees, and they might have more flexibility to change and listen to the needs of their employees.
Thank you. And so what is the difference between organization culture and organization mission slash purpose?
Thank you, Ginger. So I guess organisation culture is about how the working environment feels. So it's about how employees like interact with each other, approach their work, communicate with each other, and it tends to be underpinned by sort of values and attitudes that kind of organization or company has. So I guess a positive culture might be one where there's effective teamwork, where employees are motivated and kind of express empathy or compassion to one another, whereas a negative or toxic culture could be one where employees are bullied or ridiculed, where there's really poor communication or lots of gossip in the office, for example. So yeah, that's kind of culture. And then I guess organization mission or purpose is sort of the core reason for a charity's existence. So it's the why of the charity and the goal or problem that they're trying to address or solve. I hope that answers the question.
Thank you, Lucy. And what is the 4-day work week on full-time pay?
Sure. So the 4-day work week on full-time pay is essentially what it says. So you work 4 days, but you get paid the full amount. And there was a 4-day work week, or there is a 4-day work week organisation who've been campaigning with this, and they say that it should be 32 hours of work in the week, so it's not like a sort of compressed work week. And they've also run trials all over the world on this, including a UK trial last year. And if any of you don't know, the results have been really positive. So they've showed decreases in things like resignations and also increases in revenue, reduction in burnout of employees, etc. So we've actually written a blog with information on how it worked for some of the charities who participated in the trial, but it might look a little bit different for your charity. So yeah, I'll just get that blog link. I'll just pop it in the chat for anyone who's interested in learning more about the 4-day work week.
Great, thank you. When you say enhanced pension, what do you mean?
Sure. So I believe there's a statutory pension, which, don't quote me on this, but it's something like where employees have to give 3% of a salary of an employee's salary into the pension pot. I can't remember if it's exactly 3%, it's 3 or 5%. So an enhanced pension would be a pension where employees are putting in more money to that. So it might be that they offer 8% or that they match the contribution that an employee puts in. So yeah, essentially it's just a slightly more generous pension pot.
Great. Thank you. Another one. So it would be great to know how to reward employees within the charity sector when they have done well, which isn't monetary. Do you know how we could do that?
Sure. So, I mean, many of the benefits we've spoken about today are fantastic to offer. So, if you can reward them through other benefits, such as things like flexible working and remote working, perhaps time off in lieu, is great. I guess those are maybe getting at more of your standard benefits, what you could offer in terms of rewarding employees. If you're talking about things like what you might do instead of perhaps offering a bonus, which you might do in the private sector. I mean, there's definitely lots of ways you can show appreciation for your employees. So we hear of some charities who do things like stand-ups in team meetings. So they might call out really positive behaviour that they've seen, or sorry, positive pieces of work, perhaps. You can also have things like employee of the month, perhaps. I think there's lots of ways that you can make sure that employees feel valued and rewarded, but you just have to be a little bit creative if you're not able to kind of have to offer them a monetary reward or something a little bit more tangible. Let me know if that answers your question or if there's anything that you want me to touch on further there.
Great. Thank you. And so do you have an analysis or data on the 4-day week versus unlimited holiday within the charity sector?
Yes. So we did have an option to select whether respondents received or wanted unlimited holiday. I can just quickly check how many people received this, but it was a minority. However, yeah, not many people wanted unlimited holiday, and the 4-day work week on full-time pay was in much higher demand. So I know that the 4-day work week was received by 3% of respondents within and outside of the charity sector, but it was a top 5 priority for I think 27% of respondents, whereas unlimited annual leave, I can get back to you on the exact date for that, but it was in much lower demand. So yeah, if you're able to offer one, definitely the 4-day work week on full-time pay is more attractive.
Brilliant. Thank you. And how do unlimited holidays work?
That's a really good question. I'm not sure how it works in practice, to be totally honest with you, but I assume it's that employees are able to take as much holiday as they want, as long as it kind of corresponds with the charity's needs or things which are going on. Yeah, I think there is a little bit more debate online about whether unlimited paid leave is effective. Because I know anecdotally, I think I've read articles where employees talk about that perhaps having unlimited leave, they don't actually necessarily end up taking as much leave as they might do if they were actually just offered really generous, say 30 days annual leave. But yeah, I can't tell you more about how that's practically offered, I'm afraid. But yeah, I hope that gives you some food for thought at least.
Great. Thank you. So I think we'll put a hold on the questions for now and wrap it up here. So any questions that we haven't answered yet, we'll follow you up individually afterwards. So I'll hand it back to you, Lucy. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Jinsha. And thank you so much to everyone who has joined us today. It's been so great to have so many of you on the call. So just to reiterate, I will be sharing the benefits survey report, the webinar slides and the webinar recording later today, and I'll follow up with anyone whose question I've not answered. And we will be hosting more webinars in future months, so please do keep your eyes peeled for more information on these. And yeah, thank you so much, everyone. I hope you all have a fantastic rest of your day.